The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meets and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. For tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Abide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the Para X Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
And Mary, meet everybody and welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking with Barry Fitzgerald and Stephen Mera about some of their current projects, and there are many. Barry is no stranger to investigating the supernatural, and he's explored, written about, and recorded a quandary of paranormal and supernatural phenomenon all around the globe, and he continues to do so. And Stephen Mera is an international lecturer and freelance journalist for a number of magazines and newspapers, and has several publications of his own. He became interested in the subject of UFOs and the paranormal at an early age, and holds many honorable membership positions with organizations and establishments internationally. Now, guys in the chat room, you know you can ask questions and comments. We're looking forward to that. And if you're not here, but you're listening live, you can come over to paraxradionetwork.com. So, Barry, Stephen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marla.
It seems like it's getting longer and longer, right? 2 o'clock in the morning, yes. I've been snooping around Barry's website, and there was a lot going on in the current project library. I mean, you've got things like Staring into Darkness, Project Doorway, Phenomenon Projects, and a UIT course. And we're going to be talking about all of them. We'll start with the UTI course. But before that, where do you get your ideas? There's so many good things that are going on.
I think, Marla, it's a combination of things that's been going on. And as I look in the mirror, I see that there's grey. The greyness is now starting to find the edges, and the odd wrinkles now starting to develop. And Steve and I, we became very aware that a lot of the information that we have accumulated over our years of investigating this multitude of phenomena, that we need to start preparing a material to pass on to the investigators behind us. And there's not as many now as what there was back in our time starting off anyway. And a lot of the research that we have done it's a huge accumulation of this material that is being prepared into the likes of the UITC course and Project Doorways, which of course then has led on to the real tip of the spear, if you like, which is Staring into Darkness. And that accumulation of data is vital to help us understand where this phenomenon is coming from, and more to the point, what actually is it? And it's been enlightening for us. At sometimes it's been frightening and startling. But it certainly has been a trip to get to this stage in our lives and survive.
Yeah, I saw the little gray in the beard a little while ago, but yeah, I wouldn't say anything. But why do you think that there isn't as much research and stuff going on now as it was before?
I think everybody has a limitation when it comes to doing research. Some people are just quite happy to accept the fact that what we learn from others, people's opinions, things that are put out across the internet now, and people sort of take it on board and say, okay, well, that's what it is, and there's not much more to learn about that until it's presented by the phenomenon itself. That's not actually true. I mean, the problem is that a lot of the information is out there. It's usually come third party, that if somebody's read, or, somebody has told them. But you have to do actually the research and the investigation. And over a period of time, there are breadcrumbs, there are little clues. They've always been there. But I just don't think that they've been recognised along those journeys. And of course, it's an overwhelming amount of information. So you've got to consider how far you really want to go, because, we can spend a lifetime, probably even more, and still not get all the answers. So some people will specialise in certain areas of research and just stay within the confines of that comfortable environment. Or there's those that they actually will go out and strive to try and advance the subject, or certainly have understanding of it. Unfortunately, over the years, Barry's right, there's been a lot of people that have, that have stepped aside and not continued to do the work. And I think we're just both so passionate that we wanted to understand it properly for ourselves, not just, through experience, but trying to gain some answers and understanding of what this phenomena is and its capabilities and limitations.
And I think there's something else to consider as well, Steve, in this aspect of a fundamental aspect of the phenomena, the way that it can manifest, and how that manifestation has almost filtered through into every orifice of the whole genre. And this insidiousness that can develop from the phenomena, by the phenomena, more or less to cover its tracks, but also break apart good investigative fields.
Yes.
And it's that, initially we thought, it's just human nature. It's not, there's more to it. There's an intelligence behind it. And a lot of people don't give that thought that, wait a minute, why did the whole group fall apart after we held this particular experiment, or they were out for some type of investigation, and whether it be for entertainment or whatever it was, that suddenly they opened the door and something came through and they didn't recognize it, and it attached, and then within weeks that whole research unit or group has fallen to smithereens. And we see this dark nature filter through, and that can be insidious, absolutely insidious. But again, it's not being recognized. It has traits, it has patterns, and it should be recognized as such. But it's not being identified early enough.
There's a couple of questions in the chat room talking about that. One says, so is it just that people don't know how to even start a subject? There aren't very many mentors around. And the other one says, I believe that only certain people are allowed to absorb the information.
There is, there is a certain amount of that, I feel. But the problem is that we also see, there were great researchers, and there still are great researchers, but because of this nature that can filter through into the surface of the pond, if you like, the metaphorical pond, good researchers tend to go underground, and they'll disappear off the radar to go and do their work. And we've seen this with the rise of social media and things like that. We've seen this drive to experience the phenomena, though not take it too seriously, and that in itself has led to a situation, I think, where it has allowed this nature to flow freely, because they're not aware of the dangers behind it, and how it can interact with us, if it indeed does gain some interest in us for whatever we're doing. I think there's that definite edge to it that needs to be understood, and the change in mindset in where we are today, and in which people are out for, for want of a better thing, they're out for a bit of a laugh on an evening, and not thinking that there's side effects to this that can follow them home.
Mm-hmm. That happens. All right, let's talk a minute about the UITC. I love the C. What does UTIC mean when you spell it out?
It's the UFO Investigators Training Course. And there are a number of UFO courses out there in the world. I think I have a lot of the ones that have been sent to me, the best ones, which were around, that you could obtain throughout the world. MUFON's was probably one of probably the top of the list. And I started to go through a lot of the courses. Now, the difference between our work is that we introduce the things that should be in the ufological area. And there are paranormal aspects and even sometimes supernatural occurrences. I mean, we've got to think back when Steven Spielberg made his hit movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, even though that was the sort of the 70s, he accumulated a huge amount of data and information from real cases. And he wanted to sort of put aspects of all these realisms into the film. And, I've mentioned this to many people, about the poltergeist scene in the movie. And people kind of look at me with a puzzled look and say, what, a poltergeist scene? I said, yeah, that's the incident in the house. And he came for the little boy, and the taps are turning, the hoover's going on and moving it around the room. Things are moving around in the house. Spielberg wanted to put that in because when he was reading real cases, which was submitted to him when plotting the film, he saw aspects of, well, this is paranormal. People had seen UFOs and then go on to have some type of poltergeist disturbances in the homes straight after for a short period of time. And it was pretty much kept quiet. The Project Blue Book officers would come out and they made a big fuss of this to the press. We're going out to see Mrs. Brown today, and when they roll up outside in the nice car, looking smart, carrying their satchels, the press were there to take photographs and do reports on it into the newspapers. And when he sat down with Mrs. Brown, for an example, and asked her what had happened, and Mrs. Brown talked about, well, I saw this UFO, and that was very interesting. But when she mentioned, oh, and by the way, we've been having some strange other occurrences. And then I asked, what? And they said, well, kind of ghostly and paranormal things taking place. And they said, oh, no, Mrs. Brown, we don't want that. Just stick to the UFO stuff. So it was that compartmentalization between the subjects was going on back then. And when we started to look through courses, we thought, do you know what? It's just because myself and Barry's work illuminates the connectivity and the association between the paranormal and these ufological experiences, we thought, well, it's a necessary part of that investigation process, so it needs to be included in this particular manual, the research. So we introduced it, and no other course had actually done that. Apart from that, I noticed that the courses, that's like some of them are 12 years old, some of them are 25 years old. There's no new data in it. I mean, things are happening now. On a weekly basis, there's new things being discovered. This is how fast it's moving. And yet the courses were, just years old. So we've thought, well, let's make a course that it doesn't end. And it is the only one of its kind, because when we find new data, and because the phenomena is always evolving, then we have to include that in the course. So we do that. We send out supplements of modules of information, which is part and parcel of the whole course, and it just carries on. So when we obtain new data, we freely pass that out to the students so that they are on the same journey and are understanding, so they're not stuck at one position and not learning anymore. So we wanted to formulate this, and it was a very, very popular course, and it went over to the MUFON. Actually, MUFON were advertising it for us, but we did hear that some of the MUFON investigators were doing it. So I think they stopped advertising it after a while. But it's been very popular, and like I say, it is probably the most current course on the subject of investigating UAP or UFO phenomena. That's currently out there, and we have it now in 2 languages, in English and Spanish, and are working on further courses and further languages as well.
I got another from the chat room. She says, so in an instance like Skinwalker Ranch, there appear to be both UFO and paranormal events. Are they related in a sense, and an entity trying to communicate via what we would call paranormal means?
Skinwalker gets tricky because, of course, a lot of folks are being educated from the likes of modern media and entertainment and shows, TV shows that are coming up and showing that. But we have to go back and we have to understand the ranch from its very foundations. And whenever we go back and we start analyzing, again, everything is about the data. And when we go back and we start analyzing the data, not the allegories, the stories that have come out, but the data, quantifiable data, things are not as what they appear. And it's very, very different. And the books even of that talk about Skinwalker that have been written, again, these are based on stories. There is no proof being given here. That is problematic because we can't analyze that because personal experiences are one thing, but we've got to have the proof. And actually, there is very little to no proof that there's phenomena at Skinwalker.
Yeah, and people, I've seen little bits and pieces of it, so I'm kind of out of a loop on that. Mm-hmm. But it's very popular.
It's quite shocking for folks to hear that, of course. But again, everything is being based on data, and this is where we are today in trying to understand the phenomena and the phenomenon behind it. We need data. And sitting in front of the Senate hearing, giving your opinion on what UFOs are, and I have a friend who's a friend of a friend who had this experience. It means absolutely nothing, and yet modern media is still very keen on trying to sell us this story, which is based on air. Nothing. So we have to be very, very careful of what we assume is data and what is actually data.
Yeah, it's hard to figure, isn't it? I mean, you can't prove it sometimes, can you?
No, and we do have our personal experiences, and personal experiences are great. They're absolutely fantastic. But what it comes down to now is a race for the data. Mm-hmm. And when we start following the data, it takes us on a very different path.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you were there a few years back, weren't you, Barry?
Yeah.
And it are interesting locations, and there are quite a lot of them, these types of locations. They're usually remote, and there are a lot of reported incidents by many people. Some of them do have a little weight, some of them don't. Especially then when you start getting into television shows, because Barry knows just as much as I do, as being involved in TV shows, is that it isn't on demand. You can't suddenly say, okay, we want the phenomena. And it doesn't work like that. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite, So when you're filming a television show and you've got nothing happening in an episode, that's not an episode that they want to put out. because it's, it's just not going to capture the audience. And this is where it falls foul with a lot of television shows. And, this is what, we find these things, we find these problems, myself and Barry, when we're looking through the research and thinking, well, hang on, let's check into that. Because it's surprising. People will just take it on board and say, oh, right, well, and they'll tell somebody else this is what happened because of what they heard. But when we do the research, we find out, well, actually, no, that didn't actually happen. And that information isn't from that person, it's from here. And we find these problems. And do you know what? It goes on a lot in the media, and because it is a very difficult subject to make a television program on. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is something, of course, that is valuable at the ranch, which is the fact that it's sitting on a large magnetic anomaly, and from those particular anomalies, we see that these are key areas where the phenomena can come through and can manifest through. Now, there are several different types. We'll not get into that at the minute, but the ranch sits in one of those. The ranch is not the focal point of the phenomena. It is only part of it, of a particular anomaly that stretches 80 miles. So it's vast. It's right over that entire region, where these things can manifest and come out through and appear and as UFOs or cryptids or whatever the case may be, poltergeist phenomena, the whole lot. But again, we have to come back to the data and understand that the people who lived at the ranch, I think it wasn't the Myrtles. I'm getting my names mixed up, Steve, with Myrtle.
It was the Myers first, then the
Myers. That's it, the Myers. I was thinking of Myrtle Plantation.
Yeah, that's right.
the Myers went on record and said there was nothing happened here before them. Absolutely nothing happened until the next ranchers come along. But we have to understand there as well that when the book was written on the second period of the ranch, that book was written without the knowledge of the people who lived at the ranch. They weren't even interviewed.
No.
And yet there was a book created about their experiences, which they never had any input in. It seems very odd. And then as we start to roll on, we start to see other fractures within the storylines. And how it starts to break down.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's the same sort of pattern that we find occasionally. The Shermans moved in. They were there for only about 11 months. They moved out with these wonderful, fantastic stories and got good money, considerable good money, for pretty much a rundown ranch, because it was sold to Robert Bigelow and utilised by the NIDS Foundation. Now, if you go back and cast your mind back to the Amityville, and a family that moved in only for, say, maybe 11 months or something, and then they did it. They did a flip with all these wonderful stories as well. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I remember writing to the people that owned Amityville many, many years ago, and it was I actually got a reply. I couldn't believe it. And but this letter was, they were very, very upset. They were having to live with people trampling across the garden, staring through the windows. They'd had several people break in, and they redesigned the house. The petition to try and change the name of the Ocean Drive, it was just an absolute nightmare for them. And it's been up for sale a few times. It's a beautiful home. Mm-hmm. But again, fanciful stories that just won't die, because I think there's about 7 or 8 films now, several books on the subject, which all comes from just a story of a family that did very well from the information that they put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got another chat question or a comment. Well, it's both. She says, does this connection affect what we find when people die and then come back with signs as ghosts? Does that mean that they might not be our people, but rather aliens?
That's a good question.
The idea.
Yeah, go ahead, Barry. Go.
The idea of we need to readdress what we think ghosts, aliens, fairies, Jinn, the white ones, the shining ones, my nemesis, we have to rethink what we suspected they were based on, number one, our experiences, and also what they betrayed themselves to be. And it is here at that fundamental meeting point that we have to analyze. We have to analyze and understand what it is, where it's coming from, and how it interacts with us, and why. Because a lot of the work that Steve and I have been doing, we've been, again, following the data. And this concept or construct that we have of great Aunt Betty, who passed away three decades ago, may not be great Aunt Betty. And we now need to start questioning what's coming through. And time again, Steve and I have seen this at first hand, that when we get the phenomena coming through and we start to question it, a bit like Columbo in his rain jacket, where you go, just one more question. That is the moment at which the phenomena realizes the game is up. And it does a flit. It leaves immediately. And this is very, very important because and it's something that I keep badgering about, that when we're communicating with the phenomena, if it's there for your positive benefit, and many of it is, don't get me wrong, it's not all doom and gloom, but if it's there for your positive benefit, it's not going to mind a few questions for clarity. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. It's gone.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there has been experiments in advanced paranormal studies, and there were times when, through those experiments, what they learned was quite surprising. It actually turned the whole ties in regarding parapsychological research and what our understanding of communications with these intelligences represent. And that was because a series of questions were put down, 10 questions, which this had already been set up prior. So an arrangement had been made that questions could be asked at the next sitting. And people wrote down the 10 questions. I was involved in writing down those questions. And when they came to the table to ask the questions, in an effort from their side, direct voice phenomena from out the corner ceiling area of the room, came the 10 answers before any of the questions were even asked. So we realised very quickly, that's very demonstrative of them, but we realised that they're obtaining information from the sitters. And this is what they can do. We are an open book to them. And this is a problem when somebody comes in to sit with a medium or a psychic, and don't get me wrong, some of these people do have these incredible abilities. And they want to hear about, well, you know, my aunt had died, just like Barry said. And of course, the medium or the psychic tunes into something and it's delivered the information to the psychic. She passes it on to the person there and they think, wow, well, this psychic couldn't have understood, couldn't have known that. So it has to come from the source, and that must be my aunt. And that confirms to them that they actually believe they're talking with their aunt. And like I say, on many occasions, like Barry has stated, when pressed, we find out, no, actually wasn't the aunt. So there is a lot of deception involved, and it is confusing. And they do this on purpose. And that actually starts to tip the scale in regarding, well, what is good evidence of the afterlife then? Do we really have it? And this is why the parapsychological department started to take a step back, because they were being pressed heavily by people around the world about the evidence of afterlife. And then they decided, well, I think we need to take a step back, because if you've got only 1% of deception in there, then there's no clarity, to confirm that is exactly the case. And unfortunately, that's the kind of situation we're faced on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal trying to put everything together, and sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. All right, let me see something here. Let's talk a minute about if people want to take the course. I mean, there's so much to it. I think that it's going to take 5 years to get through it, but it's worth it. There's like 20 modules, and each module has 10, 15 things that goes along with it. So,
yes.
Yeah, give us a little what they're up against when they want to take.
Well, it's a very large. It is a large subject, so we've tried to be thorough. I mean, of course, you could always take one subject and completely just do that little subject as a course. That's how large this study is. But what we wanted to do is that without all the babble and all the things that's not necessary, because we want people to learn a little bit for themselves. We don't want. This is not a book that people can just read and go, oh, right, okay, that's what it's all about. No, it's about engagement. It's about understanding yourself, looking and identifying the problems within the research and the good quality data, like Barry says. So it goes through the process that, if it's devised for numerous different people, not only individuals that might have an interest in the subject, but it's also designed for organizations as well to employ the course as a process of our investigation standard. And it does get into all the areas of the, sometimes people refer to the crop circle phenomenon association, the alien abduction phenomena, the cryptid type things. There's all sorts of stuff in there within the paranormal and supernatural as well. And these are the areas that do provide data in those areas. That it's been discovered in those cases in the investigation process. So we allow them to go through the course. It's not compulsory to do an examination, but they can do if they want to, and be registered as an accredited investigator for the UITC. There's I think at my last count, there was around about 170 organisations around the world which recognise the course. So a lot of these courses do have their own methods of investigations and bringing their guys up to scratch. And what they've done is they've employed, it's a bit easy for them sometimes to employ the course as a standard and say, well, if you want to become an active investigator, then, just take this course. And we can certainly do certain agreements with organizations so that, that they're not having to pay for the whole things when delivering as an organization to their establishment and their researchers and investigators. So there's a lot of data in there, including the forms. You get all the forms. You get what comes with the course is photographs, there's documents, there's official documents, there's the report forms, all sorts of things. So everything is there, complete, for them to take that first step and to continue, because like I said earlier, the course doesn't end. It's a progressive course. So when we find out new information, because the subject doesn't stop, it's always evolving, we introduce that into new modules and distribute them freely to the students. So it's a course that lasts for life, really. As long as we're out there, I suppose, Barry, doing the work, it'll last at least that long.
So does it take a certain time amount to finish the entire course, or just...
No, there's no time limits on the course.
Okay.
There is time limits on the examinations, of course, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody just wrote something, and now I can't find it. Oh, okay. Now you mentioned MUFON, but she wants to know how the course compares to the MUFON investigation course.
Well, everything that's in our course is in the MUFON course, because what they've done is they've grabbed the most basic of information when conducting research at a higher capacity, and that is in there. It's usually pretty standard. But what they haven't done is kept the course up to date, and we've introduced the information into the course, and not only that, but give you, I think it's several pages of links to locations where you'll find vital information that you can return to and utilize on a regular basis. You know, we, like Barry said, we use data. We're using satellites, for one thing, in orbit to monitor the gravitational and magnetic anomalies on the planet Earth, which has a geological association with phenomena. And you won't find any of that in any other courses because they've just not done the research enough, or they haven't gone far enough, and they don't employ the paranormal and supernatural aspects of this phenomenon as well, because there are within these in these UFO experiences. And unfortunately, it's been very one-sided. I think that compartmentalization really works. You know, like the paranormal guys were in one box and the UFO guys are in another box, and they wouldn't really communicate. I don't think anybody's getting a real clear picture until we start tearing all those boxes down and just call it phenomenology. And you start to get a better understanding of what the limitations are, or the capabilities of this phenomenon in general. And it starts to get very interesting because that opens new areas of research which you can get into, actively involved in cases. And also it also looks at many of the instruments, not the toys out there, I wouldn't say, but the real good instruments that you do need to gather data. Because Barry will agree with me when I say this phenomena purposely operates outside the reach of human perception. It's designed to, it wants to. And because of that, the only way we're going to deal with this is have equipment that expands our perceptions so that we can enter into their realm of being able to see them, hear them, capture data, analyze the results, what's left behind. Sometimes it's footprints, invisible footprints, such as could be gravitational spots, gravity waves, gravity wells. It could be all sorts of different things. But we're walking through evidence, probably quite a lot. I'm not even realizing, investigators out there, that this stuff is around, and yet unfortunately, we can't perceive them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I've just got flabbergasted when I started looking at all the modules and everything in there. I mean, this is the most comprehensive course I've ever seen, and probably it will be the only one that never will be, because I don't think a lot of people would put in so much time to do that. You know, the shortcuts are always there. But yeah, it's really good. All right, so I want to get another couple of things in before we have to go, because we're doing good real quick. So I want to talk about Project Doorway and start there, and then we'll do the other one.
Well, Project Doorway, it really was a combination of Steve and I's work and looking at the phenomena, tracking the phenomena, again relying heavily on the data. And it's a series of lectures that we've developed in which it really is for those people that attend, you will hit the ground running, and really point you in the direction of where you need to go, what you need to look out for, and how you need to protect yourself. And this is very, very important because, you know, we live now in a world which is very technologically advanced, and we have stepped away from who we are as a species, and we've been almost corrupted into following this conscious connection in which everything that we see and touch that's it. There's nothing more than that. Well, no, there is a huge amount more than that. And if anything, modern living today has actually created a situation in which we have detached from this spiritual aspect, which our ancestors were very readily able to accept. But it seems to be something that we struggle with today as a society. Now, we've got folks that will head out into the investigation field, and they've got different little devices with flashy lights on it, and it does this and it does that. They're all grand. But the problem is that we've got too many. Because what happens is that when we go out into the field to research, those devices, with all their flashy lights and beeping horns and everything else, they serve to lock us into the conscious brain. So we're continually in this mode of understanding and breakdowns of information, trying to break that down and understand it, that it constantly keeps us in the left-hand hemisphere. And that in itself stops us from listening to the subtle whispers from our intuition. That's where we need to be. We need to be able to listen to that. People often would say to me, what's the best piece of equipment that I would use out in the field? And I said, myself. Learn to listen. We need to reconnect to who we are, because by reconnecting to who we are, we start to understand the phenomena better. And I'll give you an instance or an example in this, Marla, in that when the phenomena chooses us, it picks us out of the random noise and says, him, I want him, or I want her. And it starts the interaction. We have a narrow band of understanding what this phenomena is. And more importantly, its intent. Because within the first 20 seconds, and that's all we got, within the first 20 seconds, it is our instinct that develops through the body. It's a biological response, picks up on the nature of that phenomena, irrelevant of how it appears, whether it appears as a little tiny child in shorts or whatever the case may be, or the ghost of a horse, or whatever the hell it decides to appear as. It's within the first 20 seconds that we need to listen to that instinct and understand what our body is telling us. Because after that, that's whenever we run into problems, because it locks us in through the conscious connection, and it's able to tap into us in levels that is absolutely mind-boggling. And what it tends to do then is start to alter the brain patterns that follow after that. All we have is 20 seconds to know whether this is something we should be getting away from, or this is worth listening to. It's within the first 20 seconds. We call it the 20-second rule. And we break that down and teach people within the likes of Project Doorway how the body does this. What is it telling us? And that's vital for people who are going out into the field, because Project Doorway does take you out into the field. In fact, Steve and I, we've just joined forces with Carmela to form this trinity within this company we've developed to look at Project Doorway and also not only look at it and examine it with folks, but we're also going out into the field. We're taking folks with us who want to experience it, want to see it, but under some guidance. And that's what we want to do. We want to offer that over to folks, that they can go on expedition with us to various different countries. Now it'll not be big. It'll be small amounts of people, and they can put down their names, and they can join us in the field as we pull the information from the phenomena.
Wow.
That's going to be a wonderful opportunity for folks, because experience is everything. And having that experience under myself and Steve and Carmela is going to be very, very important for folks. Because when the interaction begins, we need to have people around us who understand and who are cued in and plugged in and can say, okay, the phenomena has ended here. You need to watch there. And understand its sleight of hand that tends to happen within these encounters, so that we're seeing the other things that is also happening. And it really builds this greater picture of the phenomena. So that's what Project Doorway really covers. And it is a mass of information, which again was built on the back of UITC to roll into the more modern approach in what we're doing, and looking at the technology and what is good technology to have, and how can we utilize modern technology for our benefit to pull information from the phenomena.
All right, let's talk again. Talk about staring into darkness. That is really interesting.
Now, staring into darkness. That is the book that Steve and I have began, and we're nearly there. We're near at its completion, and it has not been without its quandaries and problems, especially when we see the phenomena starting to fight back. This information it's very, very important, because not only does it readdress this aspect of the phenomena, the way that it appears, but it looks behind the curtain. Following the data, it looks behind the curtain to a point where we can now identify physically where it's coming from. And this is very important to understand, because, all these sleights of hands that are going on around the world today is about, look up at the stars. They're coming from here. They're coming from there. They're not. They're much closer.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of, they're from another dimension. They're coming through. They're not. We know geographically where they're coming from. And this turns everything on its head about what we have been experiencing, who we are as a species, and how the manipulation is occurring to us from this particular source.
Going to give a hint?
I did.
Well, that went over my head. Okay.
Yeah, that's about the most he said, I think, about it.
That's bad, and it's not 2:00 in the morning here either. This is bad, really bad. It's only 7:00. Somebody in chat room said multiverse.
No.
And
it is absolutely not. That was the deception. But we often had these little whispers of truth that was being given to us by the phenomena, and within Project Doorway and things like that, we examined the likes of the seance room, that old Victorian style seance room, where you have people sitting in a circle and maybe the spirit will manifest part of an arm, in which it grabs one of the sitters, and they'll follow that up. They'll follow the arm up to the elbow, and then there's nothing after that. It's important to realize anything can be manifested by the phenomena. Anything into the physical. The problem is we are not the ones manifesting it. And it becomes more problematic when you consider, why the hell are grey aliens appearing in a seance room? And we start stripping back those masks in which it interacts with us. We start throwing the masks away at how we interpret and how the phenomena decides it wants to appear. We pull that and throw it to the floor. We follow it by the phenomena in which it interacts with us. And by doing that, we have gone back thousands of years. We haven't been able to track it by the mask, because the mask continually changes. Sometimes that mask in which it interacts with us will change several times in a generation. But the phenomena in which it interacts with us remain the same.
I like that. This is so good. Tell everybody where to find these things, the websites and stuff, so they can get, some might want to take the course and some want, the workshop, and fill us in. Both of you.
Well, Project Doorway, people can find information on Project Doorway at projectdoorwaylectures.net. And there's also information on my particular website, charmstealer.net. And there's links there to the UITC and also across into Project Doorway. And there'll always be information there on staring into darkness. Of course, there's not that much information there because the book isn't finished yet, and we don't want to give everything away before we have it completed. But the UITC, Steve?
Well, it's listed on the Phenomena Magazine website because we have a monthly magazine that goes. It's the largest e-zine in the world and goes out to 12 countries in various languages. On there, there's a tab for courses. Under there, you'll find UITC Course, the breakdown of the modules, how to obtain it. And it can all be done correspondently and digitally. So anyone, anywhere can take the course, which makes it easier for people to be able to obtain.
That sounds good. Yeah, because I was kept reading, and I'm saying, oh my God. But now the question is, what else are you doing these days? Because this is not enough, I'm sure.
Well, we're constantly always working. I mean, of course, we've got new courses in the making. We also have the Awakening Events business, which is going to be dealing with expeditions, like Barry mentioned, experiments as well, which Barry can talk to you a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. The idea of having data is everything, and understanding the data, but also using technology that allows us to collect that data that doesn't disrupt the manifestation effect, if you like. So we're going to be examining and re-examining the seance room. And so there we'll have a collection of a small collection of folks that will look and examine and take part and experience the seance, but we'll also be analyzing the seance. It'll be directly under the thumb of scientific data to understand that and what is coming through. Now, there are many different laws that have been set down by this phenomenon. There have been many mystics and psychics who have said you can't do this, you can't do that, and all the rest. But we can clearly see from the experiments that were conducted in Eastern England during the 1990s, that the phenomena there, they were told, it has to be in darkness. The spirits, they have to manifest in the darkness. BS. Because 20 years ago in the Livermore laboratories in the United States, the same phenomena was happening to the scientists there in broad daylight. We're the ones that are being spun down this road, this yellow brick road, and by the phenomena. These rules are being set up. They mean nothing, absolutely nothing. The phenomena can appear when it wants, how it wants, and as many times as it wants, as long as it serves its purpose. So we have to try and find some middle ground here to understand it. And we can't do that unless we actually go and try it. And that's what we're looking for. And we want to start these series of experiments in which we can examine it, and even going to particular countries where the phenomena is appearing. Science has already been established, and within some of these areas, there are research bodies already there. But there are ways in which we want to start to interact with the phenomena that science has not done. So we're coming into these areas under a different perspective. And we want to address that and see what we can pull from the encounter.
So, of course, we've got the experiments, the expeditions. We've also got a series of workshops, lectures, and expos as well under the Awakening Events. Of course, Phenomena Magazine, which is currently at phenomenamagazine.co.uk, is going to be taken over to the new website soon. So it's all under one heading, so you can get all your data there as well, and documents and things like that. So it's kind of a 360, but it's pushing forward. You know, our main effort is to advance our understanding of this phenomenon, not just deliver entertainment. You know, it's trying to learn and where do we go from here, sort of thing.
Well, you're doing it for the right reasons. You know, some people want to get famous and do it, and they don't do it right. They just cut corners and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, the stuff that you do, you're doing it right, and it's really interesting, and I think everybody's going to enjoy looking around and getting involved with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marla.
Yeah. All right. So we've got to go. Finally, we have to go. But there's so much more to talk about, but we'll do it another time because, we don't want to keep you up until 4 a.m. That would not be good. You would never see me again. You hear my name and you would run in the other direction. So, I'm trying to be kind. Okay. So anyway, thank you for staying up and doing this. Really good stuff.
No, thank you, Mala.
And we'll do it again. And let's thank all the listeners as well. And until the next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2024. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.